We're almost there. All right, welcome, Erin, to the Wise Warrior podcast. I'm really excited about the topic of finances. I've had, another guest on where we talked about some of this stuff, but there's so much to unpack around finances and poverty consciousness. And I really love your like money work is soul work. So before we get started, tell everyone a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I am a former certified financial planner and CFO in my family's business. The short story is checked all of the boxes, from 20 to 40, did all of the things that I thought that would make me happy and live a fulfilling life, and realized that I really wasn't, and that I had this money and this success. I'm talking only about money, right? And yes, I mean, family and all these things, but fulfilled probably isn't what I would describe myself as. And so I got into self-development work and started, really diving into myself and money, and really seeing how money was, even though we had money, money was something that was very tender, and um, tender is the word that I want to use. Tender, right? Tender and fear. And I really decided, like, I don't want to live the rest of my life like this. Like, if this is what it's like to have what you want, like, I don't want to do this. So really just diving into myself, the personal development work, and starting a coaching practice and doing that and helping people. And then really recognizing, like, I wanted to take some time off. So I did that, and 3 months turned into several years of being off and really, really getting to be with myself. And so now I help women to really transform their relationship with money, which is ultimately our identity, who we are being with ourselves, what we believe we're worthy of. So really helping women to change their relationship with money so that they can be like the fullest version, expression of themselves.
Yeah, because I know a lot of, especially in business, and especially in the spiritual business, there's that feast and famine roller coaster that like people end up being on, and struggling to grasp like how do I navigate those so that I'm less in the famine and more in the feast, and doing so in a way that feels right to the heart because it's easy to be cutthroat and like do these things that maybe are unethical or even just out of alignment with who you are, but
Mm-hmm.
it makes you money,
Mm-hmm.
but at the expense of your soul.
Mm-hmm.
So like, how do you navigate that? How do you help clients kind of make that shift?
I think it's understanding, like, this is something that I had to really figure out for myself, of like, I had a belief that in order to make money, you were going to have to give up something. Like, my dad always taught me, you can make a lot of money, you're going to have to sacrifice maybe family, like very masculine energy. And it served me to a point, right? It was able to create and allocate and accumulate wealth, but not at the expense of my well-being or my family. And I always felt like that was part of the reason why I took time off, because I literally scheduled my only daughter's birth around payroll, right? So, like, where is this? Like, we can have all of what we want in the way that we want. And what I want might look very different to what you want. And so we have to be very clear. And I think business is changing, but I think a lot of like the old business sells to that, like, when I say our not self, or like that the self of us that want the money, but we aren't really clear why we want the money, right? We want money. We don't actually want money. We want the feeling we think money is going to bring us, right? So when you really get clear and you really start to think, like, what do I actually want, and what do I want my life to look like? Sometimes the answer is we don't actually need the amount of money we think we need or want, because that's not what our lifestyle, what we desire.
Mm.
And also you can make another decision when you get there and you've achieved that, right? You can, but for my clients, most of them come to me with money and they feel they're very much in a scarcity mindset, or I would call it a poverty conscious mentality. An awareness that I had the other day. And I'm like, I've been surrounded by millionaires my entire life. Like that has been my story, but they've been very scarcity driven millionaires.
Yeah.
I have not surrounded myself with lots of people that have generated their wealth from an abundant place. It's generating it from fear of not having enough. And I do think that there is some, generational stuff that has gone on. Like there's all kinds of things that we can play into it. But to answer your question, you have to be clear on what you want, because what you want is going to look different from the person next door. And if we're looking outside of us to see, oh, well, this is what Megan has, that I think I want that, but you've got to really like do some soul searching, some soul work to actually understand who you are, what lights you up, and is that actually in alignment with what you actually want, versus this is something that we've been told that is going to make us happy and then we're just responding to that, versus that's really truly a hearts and soul desire.
Yeah. And I think you make a good point because like TV and magazines and Hollywood gives us this glamorized view of wealth and,
Mm-hmm.
and this like false freedom of like people being on yachts doing whatever they want. And probably in reality, most of those are like the children of the people who really earned that money versus, the people who created businesses. And not that they can't be exclusive, but it is that like that view of what wealth should be. And I look at that, I'm like, that really doesn't appeal to me.
Yeah.
Like I do want, freedom. Um, and I think sometimes freedom, and I think we kind of touched base on this like briefly when we had our intro
Mm-hmm.
call, that, well, sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts all together. Um, that like we need to understand the money rules in order to create new rules, to like create we have to understand the rules to break the rules.
Yeah.
Because I think, as you kind of briefly touched on, like businesses are changing the way, we need to create a new financial system. We need to
Mm-hmm.
create systems. We need all this stuff. We need to understand the old system, what was good about it, what wasn't good about it. How can we change it? Because like the old systems, every single one of them are based on having a few people
Mm-hmm.
succeed versus the majority succeed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think like one of the things that you had said was that part of like you were in the financial aspect, but you didn't quite understand it, and then like you had this goal of like I want to understand it.
Yeah. The
Um,
fin-
yeah,
the
so
financial industry, like growing up. And I think empowering, I think for everyone, feeling empowered with your money, like that starts obviously through yourself, right? Are you empowered? Do you believe to be an empowered person? I mean, there are many people that have lots of money that say, I can't do this. It's too expensive. It's too expensive is a disempowering thought or belief, right? Choosing to say, I'm going to have that at some point in time, very different energy, right?
Mhm.
Or I choose not to buy that because I don't value the price as what I'm getting for the thing that I'm going to receive. Very different energy, right?
Mhm.
But I can't have that, or that's too expensive. Or so you really have to start watching your language. So I call it like the 3D of money and the 5D of money. It's like the 3D of money is like actually understanding how money works. And here we go back to what we have been taught about the financial system isn't necessarily the way that the financial system actually works. It's controlled by a very few, right? And it has been that way on purpose because I believe that they have come from a very disempowered place
Mhm.
because they believe in lack, because they believe if you have it, I can't have it, which is not an empowering way to be, right? Someone who is empowered wants you to make a lot of money and I'm going to make a lot of money. And there's not going to be any money I'm going to have to give up in order for you to have that money. So I think that there's that. And I also think from the 5D of like, how are you actually physically in your body feeling and embodying when you have money, because you can have people that have money and feel in their body very scarce, which are those people I was talking about with the financial industry. Or you can have people that make money, generate money from a place of love, of connection, of expression. Like the reason why you have money or generate a lot of money is because you've helped a lot of people. So how do we help a lot of people in whatever way that your business is? And we've been taught that you have to help people by coercing them or by telling them that they have to hurry up and buy now, or that if you're not buying this, you're going to miss out. And all of this lack and fear mentality. Versus what if somebody just wanted to work with you because they actually just love working with you and they want to grow and expand, not because we're focusing on, oh, you have this wrong with you, so we have to fix the wrongness. And I think that this is changing. And the more that spiritual entrepreneurs, I want to go back to spiritual entrepreneurs of like this feast or famine. I do think that there is part of the spiritual entrepreneurial community that is from a very lack mentality as well, set up to from a very fear-based place versus and this, I haven't come from a religious background, so that isn't a belief I've had to work through, but that making money is bad.
Right.
And so if you believe making money is bad, you will never be able to make the amount of money you want to make because you have a competing belief that does not allow you to make the money you want to make. So you have to get to the place of, okay, where was I even taught that? And sometimes that was taught from mentors. Sometimes that was taught from different communities. And so you really have to start questioning everything. Like where, there have been coaches that I've worked with and I'm like, I don't even want that belief. Like maybe that was your reality, but I don't want that to be my reality.
Mm.
So you really have to start questioning, you said, with advertising, or I don't know if you said Hollywood, but that's like the thought that came to mind. It's like, you have all of this, it's done on purpose, is to constantly be feeding you, like, I don't know, 97, they say, who knows if it's true or not, but 97, 98% of our thoughts aren't even our actual thoughts.
Yeah.
How often do we spend time by ourselves to question, is this belief mine? Do I want to keep this belief? Does this belief serve me? Is this moving me towards what I want to do? Or is this something that someone fed me that I believed, when you're talking about people on the yacht, on the boat? If you want to have a yacht, that is amazing. But you have a yacht because you want the yacht, period, full stop, end of sentence. If you're having a yacht because you want to show Jimmy down the road that you have a yacht and yours is bigger than his, you're not having the yacht from the place of love and expansion. You're having the yacht from a place of inadequacy and low self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where we start to I don't want to say judge money, but just let's use that word. We judge because we see that, but what we're seeing is, and what we're feeling is that people have a low self-worth. And that's why we don't, that's why we're like, ooh, that doesn't feel good. But if we saw someone on a yacht that was having an amazing time, inviting all their friends, partying and having fun, and we were like, we just love to do this because it's fun, then there's a different feeling and energy to that.
Right. I love that. Watched a video by Greg Braden yesterday about like the like how to really pray and manifest what you want. And being like, speaking the words into existence, like what we think, what we speak, they need to be in alignment. The two need to become one. Like, you have to have one thought, one mind, one energy, and then be able to see, feel, and experience ourselves in that reality, regardless of what our life is at the moment, but really hold it. Like, how's it going to feel when you have that? So if your dream is to have a yacht and travel around the world, like to be able to see yourself having that experience of this beautiful yacht and all the places that you're going to visit, and the waters you're going to dive into, like having that experience and bringing all of your senses into that one place.
Yes.
And I think this is especially true for women, but also like true for anybody who has grown up in toxic environments, of knowing what you really want is key.
Yeah.
Because it is like, oh, do I want that yacht because I saw somebody else, and they had a good time, so I think I want that. Um, or like, what do I really want? And I know for myself, I've struggled over the years of like, what do I really want?
Hmm.
Um, and I think, that's part of that soul work of you've got to be really clear on what you want. So how do you help your clients get that clarity about what they truly want?
Yeah, it's not the sexy stuff. It's the asking. Because like what you were talking about, the gentleman that's talking about what you feel and what you and making one and being one with that. Okay, that's great. But before we do that, we have to talk about what actually do you believe? And I think sometimes we've been taught, well, don't talk about what you believe because you're going to create more of it. Yeah, but it's already creating that for you
Mm.
because you aren't addressing it right now. So really of like, yes, what you want, we're going to work on that. But what do you actually believe? And sometimes that can happen as simple as asking questions, or sometimes that's just in your environment and you seeing and then you making judgments. Like I had a client last week and she was like, she was judging that people want to have like Louis Vuitton or Prada purses. And I'm like, but you're judging what that is, right? Versus what is that deeper belief there that you have that people that want that, which goes back to the yacht thing. If you're sensing that they feel inadequate or they have a low self-worth and that's why they're buying it, well, most often when we sense it in someone else, we have it within ourselves,
Mm.
right? So where are you feeling that right now? What is that creating for you? And kind of digging, pulling back some of that stuff. And then when you really like, how do you be the most biggest version of yourself, right? That takes some introspection. That takes being by yourself. That takes turning off all of the outside stuff and being within, which is not something that we are a society of doing,
Yeah.
right? We're quick hits, excuse me, quick hits. How quickly can you make the money? Can't be by ourselves, but like, no, start spending time by yourself. Turn off the YouTube, turn off the Instagram and the Facebook and all the things and spend some time by yourself and really like what you were saying, where you are right now, that is the beliefs that you have had up until this point. So if you don't like something in your life, there are beliefs that are creating that right now. So it does take some kind of peeling. I call it peeling back the onion, right? What are those beliefs that you have that are creating that? And sometimes we can be aware of it like immediately. And sometimes it takes us a little bit. And are you okay with, spending the time and doing the work to figure out, what these beliefs are so that you can create something different?
Mm.
Because if you're going to be one and you're going to be in that energy but you still have this underlying, it's kind of like a riptide in a way. If you've got this underlying belief and current, you can do all of the visualization that you want, you will create it, and you will probably not be able to sustain it because you haven't become, your vessel hasn't increased to the capacity of that person that has it from an abundant loving place.
Mm. I like that. And I think it also like, yes, it's really important to spend time by yourself, but I also think it's really important to, work with a coach like
Yes.
you because, just like your client talking about the Prada bags,
Yeah.
they're blind to like
Mm-hmm.
what that
Yes.
what that is or the story or the stickiness behind it. So it's like, you know, I think there's like one layer, or a few layers deep that we can get on our own,
Yes.
then like having that person to reflect back things to us. So like,
Absolutely.
you know, they go hand in hand, because I think some people think, oh, I have to do this all by myself, or like even, the lack mentality of like I can't afford to work with a coach. It's like, okay, work with yourself for a little bit, get yourself to a good point. Or, like if you're struggling to do that, work with somebody who can help you so that you
Mhm.
can make the shifts that you need to get yourself where you want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't at all saying, work by yourself. And here's the deal, and this is my belief. You can totally work by yourself, but it's a lot more fun and it's a lot faster to work with somebody else,
Yeah.
right? So to those of you that are like, I'll just do it by myself, okay, that's fine. And do you want to, or do you want to be along somebody on this journey that you have a lot that you look forward to? And this all goes back to money stuff, right? Like looking forward to paying money to be with, to work with someone, to be in somebody else's energy that has gone through, what you have gone through, that can help you, that can speed up the process, that can expand your mind and your energy from a different place that maybe where you are now. Like saying I can't afford, that is not the language of a wealthy person, a wealthy, abundant,
Yes.
loving person, right? It can be from the, like we already talked about, from a scarcity mindset person. But like you are choosing, it can be very triggering, but you are choosing to spend your money on something else.
Mhm.
Own that, right? That you can own and be like, you know what? I'm choosing to go to Starbucks or to, I don't know, whatever it is, right? That is what I'm choosing to do with my money. There is like, my body is like, yes, right? Like that is a choice I am making. Saying you can't afford it, there's lots of ways that you could go generate the money, or there's infinite amount of ways that you could do it if you wanted to do it. So the real, here you go back to like deeper beliefs. When you ask like, okay, working with people, what is the real belief here? Do you believe you're not worthy of paying that amount of money to work with someone? Do you believe you're not worthy of having the change? There's all this really underneath this that we just say these words, but we don't really think about what we are saying. And by saying them, we're recreating more of the same for however long.
Or if I spend my money on this, then I won't have money to spend on this other thing. So like that, going back to that fear of missing out.
Yep.
So there's so many different things to unpack around that poverty consciousness.
Yeah.
And I've been reading the Ethiopian Bible,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not like I grew up in an atheist family, so this is I'm exploring it because it's like one of the um, it contains like a lot of the books and stuff that were removed from the Chronicle and weren't touched by the Vatican.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, in the story of Joseph, like his brothers sold him into slavery to Egypt. He becomes like the Pharaoh's right hand man, because he could read dreams.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, one of the dreams he interpreted was that there would be 7 years of feast and then 7 years of famine. And during that 7 years of feast, he got the Pharaoh to like store up extra grain, do all this stuff. But then instead of like taking care of the people, he basically, over that 7 years, sold all the people into slavery to the Pharaoh.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like this poverty consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
this enslavement to something, like even like this concept of like you would give, besides being enslaved to the Pharaoh, any crops that the people yielded or anything, like 1/5 of that had to go to the Pharaoh. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like this, we're still playing that out in our own current society. You know, everywhere we're taxed to such a degree, like we don't notice it anymore, but like we're taxed when we go out to eat, we're taxed when we buy groceries, we're taxed on the money we're earned, and then taxed on top of that with everything that we purchase. We're taxed on our home, on our cars, driving down the highway, on the gas we buy, like all these things. Like we are nickeled and dimed into this slavery, and talking with various friends of like, and this is like not just in the United States, but everywhere where there are programs to like help people who don't have money,
Mm-hmm.
or like, people who, my mom is, getting close to the age of, possibly in the future needing, assisted living and stuff like that, and talking to another friend, like having to get rid of all of your
Yes.
assets and become poor in order to be taken care of by the government. And so, like, these programs that we think are doing, like, helping people is actually keeping them trapped. Like, I don't know the number of people who have said, like, I can't break, I need this assistance and I'm struggling to break out of it because, like, when I make above a certain amount,
More
I
an
don't
amount.
qualify for this, but I don't make enough to take care of myself and my family.
Yeah.
So it gets this, you like the jump to go from like freeing yourself from that to being able to take care of yourself, or even the fact of like we have to do that to our parents, our vets, like all these people, like you, in order to get the care that you need, you have to be impoverished. Like it's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like,
I I think there's two parts to this. Well, there's a lot of parts, but the first part is I remember a therapist telling me about this because we were talking about money trauma. And I did not experience this. So I was unaware, right? She's like, Erin, I work with a lot of people who are highly successful now, but grew up on food stamps. And the way that they could only continue to get service or, support is if they used everything, if they used all of their money. So these patterns that they have are continuing in their adulthood is like they're just spending everything that they make because they were ingrained at an early age to have to spend it in order to receive more. So what you're saying, these systems that we think, here you go back to, you have to start questioning, do your own research, start listening to not what mainstream media is telling you, do some like podcasts or YouTube people that are not paid by big conglomerates, right? Really start doing your own investigating and learn how these systems were started. Second is getting to the mindset of wealth consciousness versus that poverty consciousness. Because the more that we think we have to spend this in order to stay on assistance versus how do I grow my wealth consciousness? How do I expand who I am being in my vessel so that I can generate more money? And when we are trying to make our income work to get at this level, we're still playing in this vibration.
Yep. And we're
Right?
playing in their game.
Yes, we have to, jump timelines, whatever you want to say, in order to get in a different vibration. Because a person that has money is not thinking at all about long-term care or, Medicaid for assisted living. They're just like, I just make so much fucking money, I just pay for it. So that is the expansiveness that we need to be thinking of it. And I have been this way as well, as like there was a point in time where we just stopped dreaming. We stopped imagining, right? We got told by our parents, whomever, teachers, lots of people, that's not realistic. That's not going to work. How's that going to work? Right. I mean, I know that there were several times that, I've really come back into my intuition, but there were several times that I was acting on my intuition and my parents were like, well, how? Where's the evidence? I'm like, I don't have the evidence. I just know this is happening. And they're like, well, then to them, it wasn't happening, right? Because I didn't have the 3D evidence but it ended up being exactly the way that I thought it would. My intuition was correct, right? So it's really starting to trust yourself, to really, when I say be quiet, be still, is we have to develop a relationship with ourselves where we trust ourselves over anybody else.
Amen.
Where we come, it's like a returning home. And this is the thing is, if you can imagine it, it's already there.
Yeah. My friend Cam says, it's empowering knowing we have other timelines available to us. And quantum physics proves that, like, that there is energy is like waves.
Yes.
Timelines are waves of potential. Like there are
Yes.
infinite number of possibilities for ourselves. And until we collapse a specific thing and create a particle, we have that all that available to us. no matter what has happened to us in the past. And quantum physics has even shown like as soon as you pick that thing, like even some of your past things have to
Mhm.
shift in order to create this new reality that you have chosen. And
Yeah.
it's important to like stay focused on like this is actually what I want to create
Yes.
and stick to that and not be like, well, like especially when it doesn't happen immediately.
Yes.
People think, oh, manifestation is supposed to be instantaneous. It's not, because you still have to go through all of this work to make the shift, to make, to bring that thing into reality.
Yes.
And so like, then people, when it doesn't show up, we start
Doubt.
bartering with, well, doubt, and start bartering like, well, God, when you give this to me, like I'll do this,
Yep.
instead of just being like, this is what I want, and
Yep.
this is what I am creating in my life.
Yep. Or we will start to like lower our expectations.
Yeah.
And, when you were talking about like the law of gestation came into my mind. It's like when I was pregnant with my daughter, when she was so tiny I couldn't see, we called her a heartbeat at 9 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Did I ever doubt that I wasn't going to have a baby? She wasn't physically here in form yet, right? But there was 10 months that I had to have this thing come to fruition, right? And that is where I think what you were saying is we get caught up in like, well, it hasn't happened yet. Well, then that's where you need to increase your certainty. That's where you need to increase your belief. That's where you need to expand your vessel. That's where you need to increase your faith, right? Faith isn't, it's all working out. I have faith. Faith is, it's not here yet, and I know it's still coming.
Mm-hmm.
And many of us, which myself included, that muscle was not cultivated or built on a consistent basis for many years, probably maybe over the last 2 years, really, of really developing that skill set and muscle. And so we think that there's these 3D things we need to be doing. We're looking for all of the strategy in our business versus how much faith do you have
Mm.
that it's going to happen no matter what? The
Yep.
timeline, that's not up to you, right? The how and the timeline, not up to you. But for you to come forth and to do your work and to have your belief and to serve to your highest capacity, I'm not religious and I also believe in God, so it's like, God, creator, source, universe, whatever you want to use, like, do you believe that you're co-creating, or do you think that you're doing this all by yourself? And are you doing it from a heart's desire and true serving? And are you putting forth the effort every day? When you plant, I have strawberries that we planted last year. They didn't do so hot because we had kale. Now we know they really need a lot of sun, right?
Strawberries take a while
And
to.
they did, but now we've already had 3, right? So if I were to go out there every day and peel it back up and be like, well, why isn't my strawberry here? Like, that's what we do with our business. It's not, we continue to look at the 3D and be like, well, where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where are the clients? Where's this? Where's the money? Blah, blah, blah. Versus, no, I am the person that is creating XYZ in my business, and I'm moving from that place and I'm making decisions from that place. That's also, a lot of people, well, I don't have the money to invest. Well, that's not what someone that's making that amount of money is thinking.
Mhm.
So you don't have to, and I always talk about window of tolerance. You don't have to blow out your nervous system, but what is an uncomfortable step that you do need to take in your business right now that you are avoiding taking? That's what you need to go do.
Yep. And I think, it's important, like you need some strategy, but you need the long-term strategy that's right for you. And that was one of the things we talked about before, of like, it has to be right for you.
Yes.
It's like, especially with things like Facebook and all these things where it's like all these like what's
Quick
the
fix.
strategy?
Yeah.
And it's like, again, we're being controlled and manipulated. We have the carrot dangling in front of us. And it's like we're jumping through these hoops versus trusting and like you said, having that faith of like, this thing is, I'm creating this thing, I'm co-creating this thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is going to happen. What are the long-term strategies and structure that I need to put in place? Which could be like, what is the mindset work that I need
Mm-hmm.
to fix within myself so that the two become one, my inner and
Yeah.
my outer are in alignment.
Yep.
Like, what's that, what are the steps that I need to take? Maybe there is a strategy that like you
Yes.
haven't thought about, and working with a business coach.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and this is one of the things that I loved about what you talked about when we first met, was there was some course or coach or something that you were working with, and they wanted you to do something, and you were like, that's not right for me. And you, instead of like doing what this person, it's like, no, I'm gonna do my thing here. And trusting, like, when something's not in alignment with you, that's not your strategy, that's not your structure.
Yes. I truly believe everything works,
Hmm.
but it doesn't work for everyone.
Amen.
Okay. Like social media probably doesn't work for me. I don't like it. I don't enjoy being on it. I don't do it anymore. Right. Was that something that I was told you had to do to grow your business? Yeah. Did I fall into that? Yeah. But coming back on and realizing like, I'm going to build my business my way. And here we go back to faith. And that is going to be through my podcast.
Mhm.
I know that there are people just like me that love listening to podcasts. It builds trust and they end up working, like that's how I found a lot of my coaches or mentors and things of that sort. Like that is how that feels true and authentic to me. And when I show up to podcast and I think of, creating episodes, I'm lit up, right? That's something I want to do. It's just something that comes through me versus for me, social media. And there are some people that love social media. So go for it, right? So there's no right or wrong here. It's just going back to like, what is the way that you want to grow your business and connect with your people and doing that? That's what's in service to you versus thinking. And I think we can get so squirrely with money. Like I have fallen into this so many times because we value that money, but along the way, we lose who we are versus no matter what, here we go back to certainty and trust and faith. I'm going to build my business my way because you know what? At whatever level, I'm going to love my business because we think, oh, when we get to this place, if we can get there faster, we're going to feel XYZ. But we can have all those feelings right now.
Mhm.
We can feel free. We can feel joy. We can feel calm. We can feel ease. We can do all of that right now on the way. And it's a lot more fun. I've done it the other way. It's not so fun, rushing, pressure, like hurried, like frantic. That doesn't feel fun. And the thing too is no matter where you are, you're just going to amplify it. So
Mhm.
if you're stressed and you're frantic right now, you're going to feel stressed and frantic at 10, 15, 100K a month, whatever it is. So really start to be who is the person. This is where it goes back to like, you've got to really soul work, right? Who do I want to be actually return to, right? Because
Mhm.
we were taught to be frantic. We were taught to be all of these things. But
Yeah.
like, how do I want to build my business?
How do I want to have?
My way. And
Yep.
we have to be willing. I'm having to reframe because I've always had this thought of like, I'm an island of one, and it served me, like I've spoken up in groups where everyone else was going one way and I was going the exact opposite. And that took a lot of courage. I went against the grain in a lot of different ways. But it's always served me. So are you willing to stand up when no one else is for you? For nobody else, but for you.
Yep. And I think that there's, in most of those groups, there's somebody else thinking the
Thinking it.
same thing, or probably a lot of people, uh,
Yep.
but they're afraid to speak up. And it's like, once one person is willing to say, this doesn't work, this isn't right,
Yep.
or it's not right for me,
Yep.
it gives other people the permission. Now, should you learn some of those things even if it's not in alignment with you? Sure, I think you should learn the strategy, because again, going back to that, you need to learn the rules to break the rules.
Yeah.
You need to learn, like, how did other companies do this, and what are the tweaks that I can make to this strategy that will actually benefit me.
Yeah.
Because like, to be in business, if you're not willing to be somewhat social, like, you either need to shift your business model and say, like, I'm just going to write books, or I'm going to, like, create something that people just purchase, and like, we don't really have an interaction. But like, if you're doing healing work with people, coaching, like you need to have a relationship with the people that you're going to draw in. And so like jumping, like for me, doing the cold DMs is like a hard no. Like that's
Yeah.
no. I don't care how many different ways somebody tries to sell that to me. I'm a hard no.
Yep.
But like, understanding myself, like my human design, I'm a generator. So like
Hmm.
being able to maybe respond to somebody who like makes the connection with me in a different way that I've
Yep.
been like open up a conversation with them. Or, it might even be like, yes, this is probably a strategy that maybe my business needs, but it's not my thing. This could be a place where you hire somebody who
Yes.
loves cold DMing or cold calling people. Like, there's people that challenge lights them up.
Yeah.
And so like you co-create, you
Yeah.
find the people like the strength finders strategy of,
Yes.
find like you have these strengths, somebody else has these strengths, and you guys work together to help each other.
Yeah. And
So,
being social looks different for everyone, right? Being social doesn't mean social media. Being social means having workshops or going to your local, city council or whatever it is. Like you really have to figure out what does it look like for you and what do you want? Not because Megan says it or I say it, like what actually feels good for you. Exactly what you're saying. And if it's not, like I was just telling someone that I work with, like I don't like being in the weeds in my business. I'm very much visionary, but I know being in the weeds needs to get done, right? So you're either going to pay to do it or you're going to do it yourself or figure out how to make it work, right? So it's not when I say don't worry about strategy, I don't think I said don't worry about strategy, but you know what I mean? Like it's not strategy has its place, but we can do all the strategy because I've been there, right? I've done all the strategy and it hasn't worked because I haven't been energetically and vibrationally aligned with the
yeah.
strategy. So you have to like going back to what you were saying with our mind, our body, our vibration, it's the same thing. You've got to have the 5D, the spiritual, the vibration of who we are and also your strategy. And those two is what creates magic, you know?
Yeah, I love that. Um, so if you had like one word of advice or not maybe one phrase of
Mm.
advice to like give somebody who is starting out and starting, especially
Mm.
on their either their business journey or they're like, wanting to change their financial life. Like what is that one
Ooh.
thing that, like could create a shift in somebody?
Okay, it would be different. So I'm going to say for the person starting out in a business,
Okay.
I would say that I don't want to use the hardest, but the most effort you're going to have is going from 0 to 1.
Mm,
That belief of when nothing looks like from the external world, it's happening, that you maintain the belief and you continue to take action from an aligned place that your people are coming.
mm.
I think that is like, I don't know if I would have been ready to receive the message had I heard that, but like I think 0 to 1 is everything.
Yep.
You're literally moving something from nothing. That is everything. We think 1 to 99 or 1 to 100. No, momentum, like energetic, like moving something from nothing is everything. And I would say decide as a business owner, like decide your success is inevitable, period, no matter what. And when you start to doubt, which the human brain will, then your next thought is, how is it working? How, just asking yourself very empowering questions. From a money standpoint, I would ask, the person that has the money, if you already have money or you're wanting to create more money, I mean, we're always wanting to create more money, but I would ask, where where do I believe that I can't have this with ease and joy and flow
Mm.
and being who I really am? Where am I believing I have to give up something, let go of something in order to have what I want?
Yeah. All right. Like, early in my career, Like I had gotten laid off and was given like had a new job lined up, and I hadn't started. And I remember my dad saying, like, don't put all your chickens or your eggs in one basket, like that.
Yeah.
That thought of, and is there a truth to that? Yes.
Yeah.
Like, like until you've actually started, like that job, those things can be taken away from you. I get that. But at the same time, it's like it puts that patterning of I've got
Wait,
I've
hold
got to
on.
spread myself in all these different ways instead of like being really focused.
Yeah.
And then like when I made that decision to start to move out of corporate and into my own thing, he said to me, that it didn't deserve to be happy. And it's like again, like why would one, why don't I deserve that? Two, why would being in business either equate to happiness or not equate to
Yeah.
happiness? And like, there's so much to unpack around that of like, what are those things that our parents or even like a partner like
Hmm.
have said to us? Um, like I even had like a boyfriend once who like, I don't know what to get you because you already have everything. Like, what the fuck? Like, it's like that again, that like that lack mentality, and then
Yeah.
how are all the different ways that it shows up, and then like listening to your heart of like how did those things affect you, and
Hmm.
how like what stories did you create around those, and those stories create timelines that we are unwittingly on
Hmm.
that are affecting us from like something like a something said in passing.
Hmm. Yeah.
We need to start to unpack and shift and change.
Yeah. Because when people are telling, anytime someone tells you something, they're telling you their belief. Anytime you're thinking or telling something to someone, you're telling them your belief. So really being clear, like when, your dad says you can't be happy and have a business, that's because he believes that. It
Mhm.
doesn't have to be your reality, but that is his reality, right? He would say absolutely factual, that is his reality because that's what his belief is, right? But we can also go and find lots of other people, right? As evidence, like that's sometimes like, what's your evidence building list, right? Work on that. Like, who are all the people that have money that have successful businesses that came from fun and joy and ease and serve the world? Like, that's what we need to be focusing on.
Yep. And even like it doesn't have to be your own business. Like some people don't want like the thought of having their own business is like,
Yep.
oh, but having their specific career is joyful
Mm-hmm.
to them.
Yeah.
And doing that work is joyful.
Yeah.
And Cam says time is money, which is true. And money is even like I think in the human design gene keys, like
Mm-hmm.
money equates to food, which food, is survival.
Yeah.
So like if you can control whatever controls our survival, then you control the narrative. And again, we need to bring ourselves out of this concept of somebody else controls our survival.
Yeah. And so many of us move as if money is limited and time is unlimited, but it's the opposite.
Mm.
And so, what would be different if you moved from, money is unlimited and truly in time, you do have a finite time. Yes, your soul goes and does other things after, but in your body that you are in right now, you do have a limited amount of time,
Mm.
not from a lack place, right? Like, yes, we've got lots of time. Like, I got a lot of time left. And also, like, think about when you're 95, what are you going to be wishing you did that you're not doing right now?
Yep. And I think that's like, a great conversation to have with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Especially as they get older, like what are the things that they most regret in life? Because nobody regrets skipping work to
Yeah.
like do something for their family or to like, do something fun.
Yeah.
Nobody regrets those things.
Yeah,
You know,
totally. I mean, there's been plenty of people, and I've said this multiple times, there's been plenty of people that I know of that were in a rush to get their business to a certain amount, then to sell it, and then to go travel, and they don't have their health,
mm,
or they don't have, their spouse isn't with them anymore, or just whatever, right? So even break it down of like, what do I want to do now that maybe I don't want to do 10 years from now? Like,
mm,
we took time off, over the last 2, 3, 4 years. I don't remember. Because it's kind of blurred. But um, my daughter right now, she's 13. She wants to stay at home. She's like, Mom, I don't want to travel like you want to travel. I want to be at home with my friends. So there was, not that we couldn't, like, if our family decided we were going to do it, we would do it. But there is that, like, honoring her as well, of like, no, when she was 8, 9, and 10, it was fine to be traipsing all over the world. Right now, she kind of wants to have her little house, and she wants to have her schedule and her routine. So think about, for you, like, what, in 10 years might you not want to do? Like, everyone says they're going to retire and go walk the streets and stairs in Europe. Well, my parents aren't at that physical capability in this point, right? Do you actually want to be doing that when you're 75? Or do you want to be doing that when you're 45? You know what I mean? It's just, there's no right or wrong here, but it's really getting clear on, like, what are the things that you want to do now versus maybe in 10 years, 15, 20? And are you taking action on that to
mhm.
create that for yourself?
Yeah. And we should all be asking ourselves, like, what are the things we want to do now?
Yeah.
And then, how do we create that reality?
Yeah.
My friend Reed, um, she grew up with money, but like as she kind of like became an adult, and she was always, it was, she would see something that she wanted, and she never had the thought of like, I can't have this.
Mm-hmm.
She would just look at like all of her finances, and she would figure out how to budget everything that she had
Mm-hmm.
in order to be able to afford that thing. And
Yeah.
like, I just always thought that was so brilliant because, I didn't grow up that way.
Yeah.
But seeing her do that and actually getting the things that she wanted, um, I started to reflect on that of like, oh, I
Mm-hmm.
can have even if I'm not making like $50
Yeah.
million a year, like
Yeah.
I can within what I have. And like my friend Ava has always talked about, like, even when she was making like $7 an hour, she was still able to invest in her personal healing journey.
Yeah.
And I think you said this earlier. My mom always says this to me of, people are spending their money on what they want to spend their money on.
Mm-hmm.
And if you want something different, you have to say, you know, instead of that Starbucks every day, I actually want this. So let me take that and funnel it here
Mm-hmm.
and invest in that new thing that
Yeah.
will, because you can always go back in the future,
You can
later.
always buy more Starbucks. Yeah. And it's not a, I think a lot of times, because some women, they've done a lot of Dave Ramsey stuff when they come to me and they're like, I don't want to feel restricted. I'm like, you don't have to. Right. But here we go back to getting clear. Are you buying the Starbucks because you're bored? Right. It's just something to do. Or are you buying the Starbucks because you truly enjoy it and you love it? And it's, sometimes the answer for me is I don't really like Starbucks that much, but a latte, right? Like, I like a latte every once in a while, but I don't want a latte every day. That's me, right? And so you really have to, when I say slow down, come back to yourself, you really have to start asking yourself these questions. Like, is this for my best self? Or is this a habit? Or am I trying to get something from doing this versus, what do I enjoy? What do I want more of? And what is going to help me create more of that?
And I think that even goes back to like addiction and things like that of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, is this giving me what I really want? Am I, hiding from something?
Yeah.
What are all those things? Like we have to unpack all of that stuff. We have to understand, like, why are we choosing that so we can choose differently.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So good. Yeah. I think the biggest thing that I always say to clients and people around me is like, we can slow down. I know that the world teaches us to speed up, and there is a place for speeding up, but I think first you got to slow down and you got to get really clear. I even say like slow down the buying process, like really get clear on like what you want, why you're buying it. Cause I bought a lot of things from a lack place.
Mm.
But if I really would have tuned in and I really would have been like, do I believe I'm going to be able to do XYZ regardless? And that I want to be there because, or because we're fixing a problem I think I have, right? That's very different energy in how you show up to a container or with someone or whatever you're buying too, not just, I'm not talking about coaching or mentoring, right? And so really starting to slow down and ask yourself, why do I want this? Where is this coming from? And if you're tuned in to your intuition, like, is this a heart's desire or is this a mind? You'll figure it out. You'll hear the answer, or however your intuition speaks to you, you'll know.
Yep. And Cam says, I see business models in the future so different to what they have been in the past. And I think that even like, my belief with a lot of corporations, it's like they're speeding ahead and they're doing things like solely from a lack mentality of like, I've am focused on money, where it's like if you slow down, what can your people do?
Yeah.
What are the important things to do that are actually going to make your product better? You know, would it be nice to have it, available in June? Sure.
Yep.
But are you going to have a better product if it actually launches in August because you took the time, you gave your people the time that they needed without killing themselves to do it?
Yes.
Like, when you put your people first and you listen to your intuition, like
Yes.
you actually have more success and long-term sustainable success. Like I've worked at, corporate 500 places,
Mm-hmm.
and I have seen them work that like basically destroy parts of their business
Yeah.
from that
For
mentality.
speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And losing, sometimes they would let people go, but like it got to a point where like the good people left. They're
Mm.
like, I don't want to live my life this way.
Yeah. There's 2 points to that. One, when you have really good people and your company isn't at the vibration where those A players are, those A players will leave because you are out of frequency with your business and those A players. And the other thing that I wanted to point out is that I, at some point, somebody, either the collective or the businesses or both, but like one of us has to say, no more, we're not doing it like this. Right. And so it's like this. I think it's coming from the collective is what it's happening, but I remember a coach told me like I have to be on social media. Well, if you aren't on social media, I'm like, the reason why we all believe this is because we're all on social media. But if we all got off social media, then there wouldn't be a social media. So it's like the cause and effect, right? And so it's like you have to really start like, what are we, when I say tolerate, I don't mean settle. I mean, what do we believe that we are worthy of as consumers, right? I'm not going to buy a crappy product just because you want, like what you're saying, you want to get it out in time. I'm not going to spend my money on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, really starting to question like, what are we purchasing? We continue to buy things from China because we as a collective want things so cheaply. But if we all collectively decided, or enough of us decided, we want quality over fast or cheap or whatever else we're valuing. Yeah, right. We went and dropped off an old couch, and this has been something that I've really been sitting with even before we did this, but there's so much stuff at Goodwill, and there's been plenty of documentaries that we've watched, and it's like, where does all of this stuff go? We're in this like quick consumer mentality, at least the Western world is, right? But where does all of our stuff go when it's no longer needed anymore? And so, like, really slowing down our decision making, our buying decision making, and being like, what do we want to use this for? And where is this coming from? Is this coming from that, what you're saying, that quick hit dopamine? Or is this coming from a true heart's desire? I know we got off on topic, but I don't know where that came from. But I just was like, man, we need to address that too.
Well, and two thoughts. like it is a collective thing, and there is a power in the individual, but not just the individual, the collective individual.
Yep.
I think corporations are going to try to, right or wrong, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They're trying to make money, whatever. But until the people that work there or the people that buy their stuff say no,
Yep.
and I've said this somewhere in my 20s, like we have to let the systems fail
Yeah.
in order to change things.
Yep.
And I think when it comes to like the consumerism, like we can buy lots of cheap things and dispose of them and put them in the landfill or put them in um, Goodwill, or we can say, and like we're going to buy things like, a couch I buy in my 20s may not be the couch I
Yes.
want in my 30s or 40s or 50s or whatever. Like I
Yep.
want something different. Um, but I can buy the couch that is cheap and I have to replace again in 10 years. And and then another 10 years and another 10 years. And if you add up those purchases over those 10-year cycles
Yep.
versus, I'm going to actually, take the time to find the couch that I want, that's quality, that, is it's going to be more expensive, but maybe they like I know Restoration Hardware, if they I think they still exist. Like if you buy one of their expensive couches, like if something happens to that couch, they'll replace it.
Yeah.
Like there is like yes, you may have to save your money to invest in that, but it's a long-term investment.
Yep.
And when you're ready to get rid of it, it can be given to somebody else because there's the 20-year-olds who are starting off with their first apartment who
Yeah.
that couch then is like, oh my God, like this is the best thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like that cycle of life.
Yep.
But if we're all investing in the good quality things,
Yep.
long term, we have more money.
Yeah.
So we're over an hour. How do people get in touch with you if they want to work on their money story?
Yeah. Yeah. Mindset, body, somatic, all the things. I have a podcast called Your Money, Your Rules podcast. That's on Apple, Spotify, all of the places. Or you can just go to my website, generatealifewellived.com, and peruse around and click the links, all the things you want to do.
Awesome. And I will put those in the comments here. And if you're watching on Facebook, all that information will be in the description. So thank you. This was a great conversation. And again, like I think when it comes to finances, it's all still like there's so many layers. We could talk for hours and days and weeks and months and still
Yes. Yes.
be at that surface level.
It's so fun. And I think more women need to be talking about money. I don't like using the word need, have to, should, but I think the more we were talking about collective, the more that women are comfortable talking about money, having money, generating money, allocating money, spending money, whatever you want to say, all of it, the more that we give other women permission to do the same. And I think I appreciate you asking me on, and it's been such a pleasure.
Yep, thank you. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you everyone for being here. If you have any questions, put them in the comments either on Facebook or on YouTube, and I'll make sure Erin answers the questions. So
Be happy to.
thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
All
Appreciate
right.
it.
Have a wonderful day.